What's going on, guys? It's Rylan with Rylan's Amazing Photography, and welcome to the long-awaited Nikkor 24-70mm lens review. I'm not going to waste any time. Let's get right into today's video with some specs. The Nikkor 24-70 lens has a focal length of 24-70. It has an f-stop of f2.8 at its maximum and an f22 at its minimum. The lens can be used on full-frame sensor cameras or crop sensor cameras, the fact that it is an FX style lens. Now, something that might be important to you is if you're ever going to be doing landscape photography with this lens, you might want to attach an ND filter. The perfect size ND filter that works on this is 77mm. I believe the lens to be very sharp, and it works fantastic for any scenario that I've thrown at it so far. In this video, I'm going to be covering macro photography, landscape photography, most importantly portrait photography, as well as videography. That's pretty much all the specs for the lens. It doesn't have vibration reduction, which is probably the biggest downside, and it's not a huge deal because it's not a long focal length. So, is this lens a good lens? I think it is, but that's going to be left up for you to decide after watching this review. So let's hop in first with me doing some macro photography. So I'm currently sitting in a patch of clover. I've been able to get pretty close to it, but obviously distance isn't a factor as far as getting close to things in macro photography. It's more of your lens, but somehow at this position I've been able to get closer than it feels like than usual to the subject, and maybe it's because I haven't extended all the way to 70. I've determined that when you're on 70 you can get closer to the subject at your minimum focusing distance than you can at 24, but it's possible that somewhere in the middle of the 70 and 24 the minimum focusing distance gets closer, so I've got to keep an eye out on that, and that's something that's really not being able to be determined. When you're at 70mm, I've noticed that the lens is softer and not as sharp as it is when you're at 24mm. However, I think you can focus closer at 70. That's pretty much what I've determined, because if you get super close at 24 it doesn't focus, but if you get pretty close with 70 it focuses a lot better than it will with 24. So that's something to keep in mind when you purchase, or if you purchase, this lens. Based on all the tests I've ran, I've determined the 24-70 lens is a pretty versatile lens, and it's no different for macro photography. I think it does fairly well. The lens isn't, don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. The lens is not designed for macro photography. When Nikon designed this lens, I think they had portraiture photographers in mind. It's, like I said, don't get me wrong, it's usable for macro photography, but if you plan on purchasing this lens just for macro photography, probably not the best choice. I would pick a lens that has a smaller minimum focusing distance, but if you do choose to buy this lens, you can use it for macro. You'll just probably have to crop in some on post-processing, because the minimum focusing distance, it's probably, I don't know, maybe 2 feet away from the subject, maybe a 1.5 feet. So you can't get super close, but keep in mind if you're zoomed in at 70mm, it's gonna seem like you're closer. Definitely, if you do shoot macro with this lens, make sure you're not on f2.8. When you're on f2.8, the subject's gonna look really soft. It's gonna have a nice background blur, but it's gonna look soft. When I've been using macro, I've been shooting on f8. That's proven to be pretty much the best aperture you can use. Maybe go up to f11, f16. Probably wouldn't go any higher than that. Yeah, so does the lens pass the macro photography test for the review? Yeah, but I probably wouldn't use it for macro photography, especially when so far in the video we've been seeing the lens can be pretty soft and not necessarily the sharpest lens that you could purchase. As I said, it's important to remember that this is not a macro lens. You can do macros with any lens, but even if they're not made for it. But this one, it's not made for macros, but it can still suffice. But if you're looking into getting macro photography, this would not be the lens to purchase. Now, in this next segment, I'm going to be doing landscape photography, and it's going to be a lot longer than the last segment. The last segment is the shortest part of the video we're going to have. This landscape photography is super exciting for multiple reasons. I'm traveling to Natural Bridge State Park, first off, to photograph the sunrise in the Red River Gorge. After that, I'll be in a creek doing some long exposures with creek photography, and I'm going to talk to you all about how this thing performs doing landscapes. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm here at sunrise with the 24-70. And what about the view? I'm at Natural Bridge State Park to try out this lens for the review, and it's going to be a great sunrise. I can already tell. The sun is just about to peek over the mountain. It's supposed to peek over at 6:20 and 6:14. So in roughly 6 minutes, the sun's going to come up and I'm going to have a perfect angle. I've already got the perfect angle, but I'm going to get the perfect shot. The colors this morning are beautiful. It's the best sunset I've seen, or sunrise, sorry, I've seen in a long time. And it's mainly because I don't get up early enough for sunrise. But yeah, this should be really good. I have a filter attached, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the video when I was giving you all the lens specs. It uses a 77mm size filter set, and I've got one attached on here now. Oh, the sun's already starting to peak. So let me go ahead and tell you on my settings. My settings is I'm at f11 and I'm at 1.3 of a second. And okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take the shot because I wanted to get that sun just cresting over the horizon, and it's starting to do so. Okay, yep, we've got a little bit more time till it gets like about halfway up. We're probably at a fourth of a way at this point. I really want to get that kind of sun flare, so that's what I'm trying to do now. I haven't mentioned this, but I'm going to kind of do a double exposure as well. I'm taking one image that I'm exposing for the mountain range so it's nice and in focus, and then I'm taking another image exposing for the sky so it looks good and in focused. So right now I'm exposing for the mountains, and I'm at 4 seconds when I'm doing that, and I'm at roughly around 1.3 when I'm exposing for the sky. So I'm just going to keep doing this back and forth pretty much until the sun completely comes up. And then the actual Natural Bridge view is back this way, so I'll be taking photos of that as well when I'm done here. So the sun is peaking. I'm going to take some more shots, and when I'm done here you'll see the results, and then we'll shoot towards the bridge. I'm now set up facing the bridge. I'm gonna snap a couple photos here. I still have on the 24-70 obviously because that's what I'm reviewing, and I've still got a filter on. The moon is above the bridge right now, so I'm doing a vertical shot where you can get the moon in as well as the bridge itself. I'm once again doing a double exposure. I'm taking one photo and I'm exposing for the ground and the bridge, and then I'm taking another photo and I'm exposing for the moon and the sky. So the sky highlights aren't blown way out of proportion, and so the ground shadows aren't too dark. I'm going to go ahead and take this photo, and then once I've taken this photo, I'm probably going to take a horizontal of just the bridge as well. I might have to do a double exposure just for it as well. You're going to see the photo when I'm done. So far the 24-70 is performing perfectly. It does really well not wide open. Obviously its main purpose is typically to be used wide open during portraiture, so at f2.8, but I'm still getting really sharp results at f11. I'm getting a lot more sharp results actually than I get at f2.8. So the lens it works for landscape photography too. I've got the 24-70 set up on the Nikon D500, and I'm in the jungle. No, not actually. I'm in a creek in front of my home, and I'm actually kind of struggling to find the composition, but I believe I found one, so I'm going to go ahead and snap the image. The image is on your screens now. It's not the best photo that I could have found, but I feel like it does justice for the lens review. As you can tell, the rocks in the background are tack sharp and the water is long exposed. There's no motion blur, and that's because I'm using a tripod. However, that is something that you're going to want to keep in mind when purchasing this lens. There's no vibration reduction, which is a downside, but it's also very sharp and very capable. And as long as it's set up on a tripod and you're not shooting handheld, I don't really think there's a need for vibration reduction. Now granted, you can pay, I want to say, an additional $1,000 to get the lens with vibration reduction. But I'm not telling a huge difference without it. I mean, I shoot with lenses, I have 2 other lenses that don't have vibration reduction, and they perform just fine for me shooting landscapes and long exposures. I mean, as long as you're set up on a tripod, you're not going to have a real problem, honestly. But these rocks are very slick, so if my tripod wasn't secure, it could kind of move. But it's not a big deal, honestly. This is the landscape portion of my review on the Nikkor 24-70mm f2.8 lens. Was that awesome or what? I loved that sunrise of the Red River Gorge. It was absolutely fantastic, and we got some amazing photos with the moonrise coming over the natural bridge and the sunrise coming up over the mountains. It was crazy. I don't have a single complaint. Not one thing went wrong using this lens for landscape photography. It worked absolutely fantastic. It was flawless. My images were sharp. It was literally great. I have 0 complaints for landscape photography. There was no diffraction, there was no fringing. It worked exceptionally well. Now, presenting to you for the first time ever on this channel, I'm going to be doing some portrait photography. If you follow me on Instagram, which you definitely should, you've seen on my story and on my highlights that I also do portrait photography, although I don't post them on my main feed. If you follow me on Facebook, which you should also do that, just search Ryland's Amazing Photography on Facebook, you'll also see that I do portrait photography on there, and I do post it on my feed on there. But that's something that I've never showed you all, how I do it and when I do it and what I do to do it, on my YouTube channel. So, for today's Nikkor 24-70 lens review, let's do some portrait photography. So I'm here, and now we're going to be doing the portrait part of the lens review. He's going to be here and he's going to be helping me out. I'm going to be taking pictures of him. First, we're going to do some technical portraits where I'm going to test it out at different focal lengths and different f-stops. Then we're going to move locations, and I'm going to do more of just actually focusing on taking a good picture. But this first part is going to be for, to test out the lens and its technical abilities. So I took those and I used the f-stop of f11 and f2.8, which is f11 not really blurring out the background, and f2.8 is. Okay, so I'm now here in Lightroom, and these are the first 4 photos that I've taken. If you're looking down on my I'm not really sure what this is called, on my display, I guess on the bottom part, you can see that there's more photos. That's coming later in the video, and you'll see those very shortly. But first, I'm here to discuss the technical aspect of the lens and how it technically performed on the portraits. Not how did the portraits look. This wasn't about style. This wasn't about posing. You'll see those in just a few short seconds. This is all about the technical aspect. So let's go ahead and zoom in here. This is the first photo I took. My focal length, as you can see, it's in the top left corner thanks to Lightroom. This was shot with the D500, which doesn't really make a difference because we're focused on the lens here. So this is at f2.8 at 24 millimeters. Now my settings as far as shutter speed and ISO goes, that stays a constant. It stays the same on every single one of these photos that you're about to see, because I'm focused on changing my f-stop and focal length. So zooming in here, you can see that the lens is pretty sharp and it's managed to capture focus. Something I've noticed is that f2.8 isn't going to show up nowhere near as much when you're at 24 millimeters unless you're close to the subject. Now, when I was taking these photos, I was making sure that I wasn't moving in closer or moving back. I wanted to keep everything with the exception of the focal length and the f-stop as constant as possible. So I'm staying the same length from him in all of these photos. It's sharp. It's in focus. I don't really have a complaint. Technically, there's no problems in this photo with the lens. We're not getting any diffraction or anything. It looks pretty well. Okay, now let's go to the next photo. This is also at f2.8, but I'm at 70 millimeters at this point. So the tighter you zoom in and the more telephoto you make your lens, the more the background is going to be blurred out. When I'm zooming in here on his eyes, they're in focus. I mean, they're darkened because it was kind of overcast outside, but they are in focus. As you can see, you're getting that nice, smooth, creamy background with the bokeh. It looks gorgeous behind the portrait. This is a really good headshot. Also, I want to mention I did not edit these 4 photos at all. These are straight out of camera, raw files. I did nothing to them. So it's still sharp. It didn't miss focus or anything. It did exceptionally well. So the next photo, as you can see, this one was taken at f11. And it does look like I changed my shutter speed a little bit. I think it got darker. I did change my shutter speed from 1/2000th to 1/160th, which is a pretty big difference, but I couldn't really help it because I believe the sun was shining pretty bright in the first 2, and then once I got to the 3rd and 4th one, it had gotten darker outside. So this is taken at f11, as I mentioned, at 24 millimeters. Now, he's still really good in focus. And the only difference is the background is in focus as well, which is exactly what it should do. Everything in the image looks good and sharp. I have absolutely zero complaints. Technically wise, it did great. There's no diffraction. We're not getting any fringing or anything. I think it looks pretty good. 24 millimeters, this 24-70 on the Nikon D500, you're getting a 1.5 crop as well, because it's a full frame lens and a crop sensor camera, which is something I've never really talked about in any other part of the video, but that's just something to keep in mind. If you're using this on a crop sensor body, you're going to get an extra 1.5 crop, which can be good or bad. Personally, I think it's a good thing for portraits because it's making your lens even more telephoto. That's just my personal opinion. Okay, let's go on to the next photo. This photo was also taken at f11. And the only difference is it's at 70 millimeters. Now, when we zoom in on his eyes here, we can see that they're still good in focus. There's a little bit of motion blur in this image, not a lot, but that's due to my shutter speed, and that's my fault. That's nothing to do with the lens. Now, something you're probably noticing is the background is not in focus. It's a little bit blurred out. It's nowhere near like it is when it's f2.8. But that's something you've got to keep in mind when you're using a telephoto lens. Even if you are on like f11, you're still going to get a little bit of background blur if you want it or not. So if you didn't want to pick up that background blur, you can always, you probably need to up your f-stop to around, I don't know, f16, f22, which can present your image being a lot more soft. I typically don't go over f16 for any scenario because it can cause diffraction and it can make your image go soft. But, I mean, I think this lens performed exceptionally well. I'm letting you all draw your own conclusions. I'm showing you the pictures. There's no complaints with these 4 images. Technically, I see no flaws. There's nothing I see wrong with any of these images. If you disagree, feel free to comment it. I'm just telling you my opinion. At the end of the day, this is for you to decide. It's a full hands-on review. There's no bias. This isn't sponsored. So this is totally up to you at the end of the day. So now I'm going to actually be taking a portrait, and I mean, obviously last time I was too, but this is going to be less technical. It's going to be focusing more on the image rather than what the lens can do. Okay, so kind of... What do you think of my portrait photography skills? Were you impressed? Were you not? I have no complaints with this lens on portrait photography. That wasn't the first shoot that I've ever used this lens on. I think it works exceptionally great. I've never had in my entire life a lens so good for portrait photography. It's so versatile for everything, and it just works absolutely fantastic. I have absolutely zero complaints. Well done, Nikon, for making the best DSLR portrait photography zoom lens. Now, I am looking into getting some primes because I know for portrait photography, a lot of people find that a prime works better than a zoom lens. But if you're going to get a zoom lens for portrait photography, I would not have a doubt that this is going to be the best one from Nikon that you can get. Not a doubt in my mind. So, the next topic is videography. Well, this is kind of a difficult topic to cover for a lens review because just as much as a lens matters, the camera is going to matter too for videography. So this was kind of challenging to present, and I feel like that the best way to do that was filming this with the lens. Every part of this video in my office where I've been here, stationed here, has been filmed with the 24-70 lens. It's set up on a tripod right now. However, I can't just solely base it off this. I need to have it out in the field, which I've done, and I haven't exactly announced it and told you all. Up here in this corner, I'm going to be linking some videos where I have used this lens to film the entire video. Just this lens, no other lenses. It's filmed the entire video when I've used it. So if you want, you can go and check out those videos if you like the quality. Make sure if you're on a phone or a computer or whatever, make sure that you click the little, I don't know what it is. There's a little icon that you can click. Make sure that you have it in 1080p so you're seeing the full quality of the video, so you can base how this lens is performing on that. Now, I've also used this video for live feeds. What I mean by that is I'm not recording, but I'm directly transmitting through a cable to a TV in another location. When doing so and looking at it on a big monitor TV, the video looks outstanding. I'm not recording that at the same time though, so I don't have any of that footage to share with you all, but when I'm transmitting it live, it still looks crystal clean. It's sharp. It's great with contrast in my opinion. I think the lens works extremely well. So that's pretty much all I've got for the videography aspect. I'm not going to add an extra segment for that, which leads me to the point, that's pretty much all I've got for this video. I really do appreciate you all watching this lens review. I want this to go big. We did a review on the Nikkor 200-500 full hands-on review just like this lens. You can watch it right there. We got, I want to say 1.1 thousand views. It might be more than that at this point. I want to get that or beat that with this video. That means that I need each and every one of you watching to share it. I mean, just send the link to one friend. That would help because that friend is going to send the link to his friends. Or you can share it on your Instagram story, on your Instagram page. Share it on your YouTube channel. Help this video take off. It's going to help a lot of people. This is the best review that I've ever did, and I've spent a whole lot of time working on it. So the more that you all help me, it would really be appreciated. If you've considered purchasing this lens, or if you know someone that's considered purchasing this lens, thanks for watching the video. If you know them, send them the video. It would help me a lot. That's really all I've got for this lens review. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helped you. I would really appreciate if you all would like the video and subscribe, because that would help me out just as much as you sharing the video. Thank you all so much for watching the Nikkor 24-70 f2.8 GED lens review. I hope you guys have an amazing day.